You're listening to Let's Stay Together Anime Break, the sub-series of Let's Stay Together where we talk about Fruits Basket 2019. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
And today we're discussing episode 10, which was called It's Valentine's Day After All. So we're going to do our spoiler-free summary discussion and then spoilery discussion, as we always do. I don't have any announcements today, so my only announcement is that I have a cold. Deal with it. I mean, I need to stop getting sick. It's damaging the quality of the podcast, I feel.
It's damaging the quality of your life.
It is damaging the quality of my life. Except I get to stay home and watch spoopy YouTube shows, so whatever. I guess that's fine. I was like, I'll work from home. And then I was like, I'll nap from home halfway through the day.
You know how tired you get when you're sick?
It's terrible.
Like last time I was sick, I got up at like 11 and I sat at my computer for like 3 hours and I was like, I'm tired again. So I took a nap at like 2.
I got up at like 10:30 and it's like we're recording at like 4 and I'm already tired. It's fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Tomorrow is another day. Also, at least this time I can talk, so that's nice.
Sorry guys, you've been thwarted in your efforts to get an ASMR video again.
No ASMR videos this time. Unless you want to listen to me just like snort. I can do that if you want. Anyway, I can talk, so we're recording. And then I'll have a nap later. So let's go ahead and start. So this episode of the Fruits Basket anime, it has the same content as chapters 15 and 16 of the manga. And if you watch the old anime, which I kind of forgot this episode, like I forgot how it was put together, so I went back and watched it. And actually, like, chapter 16 is, like, entirely cut, and half of 15 is cut, almost. Mm-hmm. Like, Kagura shows up, and then I think they go home to Shigure's house, and then from that point on, it's altered, and then chapter 17 is cut in or something. So, So, like, half of this episode wasn't in the original anime, just in case anybody was wondering. Or people who've seen it before didn't remember and wondered what the flow was. That was what happened before. So, yeah, it's interesting. And also exciting because a lot of this is stuff that, like, I think builds some depth to, like, Shigure's character, for example, as we're going to see. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And otherwise, just another set of pretty accurate chapter adaptations.
For the most part. There's some minor additions. Like, there's some minor added content, but we'll talk about that. Like, for example, I guess, to segue, the very first scene is added. So,
yeah.
The opening of the episode is Kyo, and he's in bed, kind of like writhing around, like he's having a bad dream, and then wakes up panting. He's still breathing heavily, and then he rubs his eyes. And then we cut to downstairs where Shigure and Yuki are like cheerfully and cheerfully eating breakfast and complimenting how good it is, and talking about how when they lived together they never had a real breakfast to Tohru. And then Kyo grumpily comes downstairs, grabs some milk, and then refuses to eat breakfast and leaves before he can say anything. And then we cut to the theme song.
To be fair, that's how I have breakfast most days.
That's pretty much... Anyway, I also thought it was interesting that, like, it didn't... In the last episode, didn't they cut in, like, an extra scene before... No, sorry, it was the New Year's one. Not the one with Haru, but in the New Year's episode, there was an additional scene that was added that was also kind of inserted before the theme song, where she's talking to Uo and Hana, and then she runs off and goes home. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Like, it's just another, like, it's a pattern of adding something to set up the episode differently, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of the chapters kind of start in media res, so I think the anime is
fucking fancy words.
A little. Not to college.
I'm degreed.
So I feel like the anime is adding in like a little bit more of a lead-in sometimes.
Yeah, it does feel like that. And the way that the manga cuts in is like, it's like a little scene with Kyo that's like repeated later. So it's not like you lose anything by having him wake up from a bad dream.
Yeah.
But anyway. So after the theme song, we open with Uo and Hana at Yuki's, like, shoe locker. And they open it, expecting to see a mountain of chocolates pour out, but disappointingly, there's only one inside. FYI, when I wrote this note the first time, I said, "But alas, there's only one." And then I opened my notes from the anime or from the manga episode, and it said, "Alas, there's only one." And I was like, "Well, I can't do this again. Kayla will make fun of me again." So disappointingly, there's only one chocolate inside. But Hana has a theory that, like the cuckoo chick kicking other birds' eggs out of the nest, each Yuki fangirl has come and taken out the previous chocolate and replaced it with theirs. And the proof, it turns out, is in the garbage bin.
And in the dub, they add in a little pun that I like, because Uo says, "That's low even for these cuckoos."
That was a genuine laugh. I hadn't seen that before. Yeah. I feel like they tend to do that with Uo's dialogue sometimes. Just like give her really sassy jokes and stuff. It's a very sardonic sense of humor.
Yeah.
So Hana says that she is the hawk who swoops in to take the last chocolate. And of course, we learn that it's the day before Valentine's Day, so it's going to be all hell for the Zodiac at school, I guess.
I also feel like the anime made Yuki look a lot more disappointed that
she's taking the chocolate.
Hana was taking his chocolates.
He's like, kind of like, whatever. I forget what he says.
He's like, oh, I guess that's fine. I don't need any. Go ahead.
Just take it out of the garbage. Just a whole pile. And clearly the top of it hasn't touched garbage, because it's like just piles and piles of chocolate. We see Tohru and Hana and Yuki walking together down the hall, and Kyo is walking the opposite way, looking grumpy still. Tohru greets him happily, and Uo's like, "Yo," and then Kyo just kind of grunts and walks through them up to Yuki. They stare each other down, and then Kyo suddenly punches Yuki, but he stops just short of his nose. And Yuki doesn't flinch the whole time. And Tohru freaks out. She's like, "Kyo-kun!" And then Kyo huffs and walks off. So he continues his path of just walking off. Uo says that he's being really combative this morning. And Hana says that his waves are uncharacteristically naive or innocent, as it says in the subtitle. His thoughts are chaotic. But she says it's none of her business as long as it doesn't cause trouble for Tohru-kun. And Uo says the same thing, and they cuddle her. In class. So all this is happening before class. I still don't understand how they get to school so early, but whatever. In class, outside of the classroom, we hear a chorus of creepy voices, and we cut to a room full of girls who are looking dark with glowing eyes and like dark purpley auras, thinking about giving Yuki chocolate. Girls are scary this time of year, Uo says, while she and Hana and Tohru stare at them. It might be the scariest event of the year for the Junichi, Tohru thinks. They see a girl bring Kyo some chocolate, and then Tohru was like, "Oh, Kyo's popular too," and Uo was like, "What a player." And then she also commented that the girl calls him Kyo-chan, which is really funny. Uo also asked if Tohru would be giving Yuki and Kyo chocolate as well, and she says that she will, and also she'll be giving some to Uo and Hana on Monday, because she's a nice friend. We cut back to Kyo, whose two friends that we saw from, we talked about them in the first anime break, which was episode 3. They're the ones who sassed him about drawing all the cats to him.
Yeah, I was excited to see his two random friends again.
Yeah, they're back. I know. We are fans of the two random friends on this podcast, I think. So Kyo's two friends come over, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so jealous." Then Kyo is like, "Is today Valentine's Day?" And then one of the friends is like, "Well, it's tomorrow." And Kyo immediately stands up and he's like, I'll go home. "No, it's dangerous there too." And then he like sweats. Like you can see in the anime, there's like a sweat drop that like forms on his face and falls off. He's like, "A trip. I'll go on a trip." And he tries to make a break for it, but as soon as he gets to the door, their teacher stops him by like slamming him in the face with a book. "Is it trying to skip homeroom?" she asks. "You punk teacher," Kyo yells. She's like, "What, you think you can get away with calling me names, Orangey? I'm ready to dye your hair black anytime. Go sit down if you don't want a makeover." And then she like saunters off to the front of the class. Their teacher is awesome, as a side note. Tohru wonders what's gotten into Kyo. Maybe he has a bad memory about Valentine's Day? I don't know. Could be true, since we saw him struggling, except he didn't know it was Valentine's Day, so whatever. Outside after school, we see Kyo walking, and he suddenly stops. Tohru asks what's wrong, because she's like come up behind him, and we see at the school gate, Kagura is waiting for him. And then from the sparkly side of the school, she calls out to him and runs over, and Kyo jumps off the stairs and runs, and Kagura chases after him, yelling, "Je t'aime!" which is great. They cross, Yuki's like walking under the bridge thing at their school, and they cross paths with him. And he's like, "Oh, I figured." And then Tohru realizes that that's what Kyo was concerned about as well. We cut to Shigure's house, and Kagura has come over, it turns out, to invite Kyo to go out tomorrow, since they're a couple and all. And then Kyo is grumpy about it. Tohru comes in with tea, and she asks, oh, does that mean it'll be like a date? And Kagura's like, oh, Tohru-kun, you're so silly, or whatever. She just dismisses that she called it a date. And Kyo's like, no way, I'm not going. Kagura stands up, her eyes glowing suddenly and hair blowing in an imaginary breeze, and says, we're going, or whatever, in her, creepy voice. Horror voice. Yeah, this episode bounces back and forth between shoujo anime, like horror, and I don't know, whatever else.
I just said bore, but that works too.
Her bore voice.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bore voice. If boars had a voice, I guess it would probably sound like that. Kyo continues to protest, and then Kagura starts crying, so she's bounced from being happy to scary to crying. And Kyo was like, don't cry. And then Shigure is like, hey, if you're gonna continue to flirt, could you do it somewhere else? Which is the best. How about this, Kagura suggests cheerfully. We bring Yuki and Tohru and make it a double date. And poor Yuki and Tohru, who are just minding their own business distributing tea, are suddenly like they're suddenly run into the conversation. Nice idea, Shigure suggests. And Yuki and Kyo protest. But Tohru, whose eyes shine with happiness, says, I've never been on a date before. You wouldn't mind? And literally no one in the world can say no to that. So, of course, Kyo acquiesces. Later that afternoon, Kyo sees Kagura off. And Kagura says that Haru, she mentions while she's saying goodbye to Kyo, that Haru told her that Yuki and Kyo are starting to get along. And maybe if they get to know each other better, they could get along even better. And that would make her happy, too. And then she takes off. Shigure, who is creeping in the doorway, he's just sitting there, says that it's very perceptive of Haru. The first thing people need to learn to do is compromise with each other. Kyo argues with Shigure, and then eventually he's like, so you're getting to know each other better. We see Tohru inside cleaning up the table, who overhears Kyo yelling too. So I feel like Kyo and Yuki both heard him, because Yuki comes downstairs after this. Kyo says, I hate Yuki, got it? And that doesn't need to change. Why do you speak as if it's your duty to hate him? Shigure says, and then he looks up with his chaotic, evil Shigure face that we've seen over and over again in the last couple of episodes. I feel like we see it more and more. This kind of plotting kind of face or whatever. Why do you speak as if it's your duty to hate him with eyes that say that you're afraid of getting to know him? And then Kyo suddenly has a memory or a flashback, or maybe it's even a premonition. It's very difficult to tell. So we know what it is because we've seen this before, but I feel like we've seen different treatments for flashbacks throughout this, so it could be a flashback, but who knows? I don't know. We see a hand reaching out to a person, and I think it's his hand because it looks like you can see the beads on his left hand, whatever. You can see his bracelet. His eyes are wide, and then we see blood and a bag flying into the air, so I guess it's implied that the person is a woman, but that person is kind of just barely cut off on the side of the screen too. So it's a very sudden scene.
Yeah, and it gets kind of a staticky film grain kind of overlay.
Yeah, and it's dark. It's 2 seconds, I counted.
Yeah, it's very quick.
To write that summary I just wrote, I had to watch it 10 times because it's so fast. But yeah, so he has this another really intense, what seems like a flashback and or maybe a premonition. He snaps out of it in shock and then he runs off. So it's very serious. He looks really scared. In fact, Tohru comments on that when she's walking. So Tohru follows him as he runs off. Yuki comes downstairs and asks Shigure what happened, and Shigure says that he got a bit impatient and maybe pushed Kyo a bit too far. And Yuki also looks after him and looks concerned. Not super moved, but just a little bit concerned, as he tends to. Outside...
He's just this is going to ruin my day.
Yeah, basically. It's going to ruin my day tomorrow, for sure. For several days, probably. Outside, Tohru walks through the woods and calls to Kyo. And there's a pretty relatively extended scene of her walking in the woods, I felt. Especially when you compare this, there's 2 seconds of really intense flashback, and then there's several seconds of her walking in the woods. So she sees him from far away, and he's curled up on the ground, he's sitting on the ground but curled in a ball kind of, and she slowly walks over to him. She thinks it's he's doing his best to protect something by hating Yuki. Protect what though? Himself? Forget it, Kyo says as she approaches. It has nothing to do with you. Tohru's expression softens. It was surprise and softens into concern, and she closes the distance between them and gets on her knees. It's okay if you don't get along, she says. I did want you to get along, but it's fine if you hate him. We see a shot of Kyo's back, and Kyo remembers Tohru saying, It's plain as day. You have a palm on your back. You're great, Kyo-kun. Yeah, he says. And then he says, I don't want to see. I don't want to think about anything yet. Kyo's heart is so much more delicate than he makes it seem, and so is Yuki's. It seems like just touching them might bruise them, Tohru thinks. We see them walking back to the house on the stairs, and on the walk back, Tohru asks if it's okay that they're going on the date tomorrow, and Kyo says he can handle it if it's just once. Tohru looks away, kind of still looking concerned, and Kyo notices, and he taps her on the head, like he's done before. She's like, what was that for? And he's like, nothing, let's hurry back, and she smiles. And as they continue walking up the stairs, Tohru thinks, the pain they hold inside, the hurt and anxiety, I hope I can wipe it away someday. And we see the scene kind of like pan all the way up the steps to Shigure's house, and her inner monologue continues, the same way they did for me, because I want them to be happy too. And then we fade out to black, and then fade in to a magnolia tree about to bloom. So there's a really, like, strong cut to, like, another scene. And we see Shigure as a child. We see him waking up, and there are tears in his eyes. And we hear his narration. I had a dream about the one I love. From that moment, it was all over for me. And then we cut to an answering machine beep, and then we hear a woman on the phone frantically warning Shigure that she'll be over soon and to please finish his manuscript. Yuki and Tohru appear to tell him that they're heading out for their double date, and he tells them to enjoy themselves. And then he's like saying something, and Yuki kind of casually walks off before he can finish talking, but then Shigure calls him back and tells him not to be a cheapskate. And then Shigure also sasses Kyo to escort Kagura properly as well. And Kyo was like, this is stupid, of course.
Having a real hard time putting on his sneakers.
He is. He's like sitting at the thing and struggling to put on his sneakers. I think he's just struggling out of not wanting to go.
Yeah, he's just so angry.
Yeah, he's just grumpy.
Stupid date, stupid shoes.
Damn rat. Yeah, basically. Tohru confirms with Shigure that he doesn't mind bringing the Valentine's chocolate that she prepared for Hatori and the others, and he's like, don't worry, I won't eat them, which he teases, but then Toru's like, that's not what I meant, it seems like you're busy with work, and then Yuki kind of cuts her off and says to leave it to Shigure. There's no reason for her to go to the main house. And then she and Shigure kind of pause, and Shigure is like, he thinks little does he know that she's already been there, of course. Mm-hmm. Yuki is right, he says, and then he pats her on the head and says, just go have fun on your date. And Tohru smiles and says, okay, in the most delicate and cheerful way. And Shigure's eyes widen, as if he's feeling something deep in his heart. Maybe his heart grew 3 sizes. Kyo calls him, and then the trio heads out. He calls him, and he's like, we better go, and whatever. The phone rings as Shigure lets the answering machine pick it up again as he sends the kids off. It's the same woman frantically calling again, saying, I don't mind if you screen my calls, but don't run away. And he says, when you say it like that, it makes me want to live up to those expectations. The
subtitle actually said, live down to your expectations.
Yeah, I noticed,
made me laugh.
I noticed that. I wonder if that's, I don't know. Yeah, live down to those expectations. So we cut to the double date. We cut away from Shigure and his living down to people's expectations to the double date. And they're actually, I guess they're meeting Kagura at the train station. Kagura grabs Kyo from behind and says she could hardly sleep from the excitement. And Kyo says, well, why don't you go home and take a nap or whatever? And then off to the side while they're having that conversation, Yuki notices that Tohru is still distracted. And he asks if something is wrong. She says that Shigure is always smiling and that she can't tell if she's causing him trouble. And Yuki says aside from Hatori, there are very few people who can tell what Shigure is thinking. A long time ago, someone once compared him to a ripple on the water, a wave that approaches and then recedes. It tickles your feet, but when you reach down to touch it, it leaves. He's the kind of man that you can't get a handle on, Yuki says that person said, in extreme detail. If you ask me, he says, Shigure is a jellyfish floating on the wave. Kagura calls them because they're going to be late and they'll miss the movie if they don't hurry. And Yuki says he may be smiling on the outside, but who knows what he's plotting on the inside. And then we cut back to Hatori's house, where Shigure has brought the chocolates from himself, he says. And Hatori slams the door. And Shigure is like, wait, I lied, they're from Tohru. And so, of course, Hatori lets him in. She's conscientious, Hatori says, and Shigure comments that there's more chocolate for Momiji and Haru as well. Shigure explains that Tohru was going to bring it, but guess what? She's busy because Tohru, Yuki, Kyo, and Kagura are on a double date, he says. It's got to be Tohru's influence, Shigure says. They're probably enjoying a movie right now. And then we cut to / pan across a poster called Mogeta, The Last Crusade. So we were right. We did get to see Mogeta. Yay! And it's a dramatic scene from Mogeta. If you were watching this for the first time, Mogeta is like, I guess, a running series that's in Fruits Basket. I don't know. Anyway, We cut to a dramatic scene from the movie. "Don't do it, Mogeta. Don't let the evil creature get you," a boy screams, and an old man is like, "Stop, Art, it's too late." And the girl's like, "Look, Mogeta transformed." And then the villain is like, "No, this isn't how it was supposed to go." And then the creature that we know as Mogeta grows, and its eyes light up, and its eyes get all red, and its teeth get all pointy. And then we pan over to Kyo, who looks bored, and Yuki, who also looks bored, and then Tohru and Kagura, who are moved to tears by Mogeta's struggle. So I thought it was funny that they like fully animated Mogeta. Like we didn't just see them; we got to see Mogeta.
I was excited.
We cut back to Hatori and Shigure, who are enjoying some tea. Hatori says that he can imagine Tohru influencing them. She has a way of softening people. Shigure tells him about how he picked on Kyo yesterday and how Kyo got all freaked out. And Hatori is like, "Don't freak him out," which I thought was funny. But of course, when Kyo came back with Tohru-kun, he says Kyo was back to normal. He looks satisfied. Hatori says, "Things are going as you planned." And Shigure is like, "Why are you being so critical, bro?" And Hatori is like hell you're not using her, you bold-faced liar. At least that's what this translation said. I was like, I don't know. It's kind of intense, but sure. Shigure looks at Hatori, and we cut to Hatori's face looking quite serious as he accuses Shigure and Akito of using Tohru as their pawn for their own end goals. And Shigure sighs and then looks away. And then almost like he's changing the subject away from being accused of using Tohru, he's like, "Do you remember the morning that we dreamed? The morning that you, Aya, and I all cried? It turned painful for you two afterwards, but me, I still have those feelings inside of me." We see the same scene of Shigure waking up, and the magnolia blooms. So like we saw the magnolia before, and now it's blooming, kind of like metaphorically, I guess. That fervor, so thrilling and sweet and sad. We see a memory of baby Shigure talking to Hatori, and Shigure has like climbed up a wall, and he's like back to back with Hatori. "I want to make it last forever," baby Shigure says. "I want to give it form and make it mine." And Hatori looks up, and then we focus on Shigure's face as he says, "And I will." In the present, Shigure says, "That vow is still right here. I'm not bothered about deceiving or using people to get it. Even if," and then we cut back to Shigure's creepy face from before, his chaotic evil face. "Even if it ends up hurting someone," he says. Hatori sighs, and then Shigure says he does feel bad about it sometimes, though, especially when looking at Tohru, because she really is a good girl. And then we see like a image of Kyo, Yuki, Kagura, and Tohru eating fries at a restaurant, and Shigure's narration continues on top of that. "I think she may be a little too pure for me, though." And then he remembers patting Tohru on the head earlier. "Sometimes she forces me to realize that I might be the dirtiest of all." He cuts out of his serious monologue by being like, "Well, I really am dirty, of course." "So, Hatori," he continues, "I'm jealous even of you. Maybe I'm the most cursed of all." And their conversation is interrupted by a woman who comes in and says that it's time for Akito's checkup, and Shigure says that he will go as Hatori's substitute. And Hatori's like, "I saw that coming." We cut to Shigure slipping on his shoes. Hatori asks him to thank Tohru for the chocolate for him when he gets home. "Whatever ending you're headed for," Hatori says, "be prepared to lose a tooth. I don't know if it will be Yuki or Kyo or Honda-kun, but you're sure to end up eating a punch from at least one of them." And Shigure chuckles and says, "I'll reap what I sow." Hatori says, "I won't be your ally in this, but I won't work against you either." And Shigure smiles a small smile and says, "See you later." And then as he's leaving, Hatori warns Shigure not to let Akito catch a cold, and he chuckles awkwardly, I guess. As Shigure leaves, Hatori says, "My hands are dirty too." The scene transitions to a long hallway, and it's now dusk. And Shigure's narration continues. "They can have a few teeth, or even bones. That's not what I care about." He stands outside of Akito's door and calls to Akito before sliding the door open. "Shigure, I didn't know you were visiting," Akito says. "I came to visit you," he says, and then he steps into the room. Akito sits in a darkened part of the room. "Well, isn't it only natural?" Akito asks. "So it is," Shigure says, and he stands over Akito and caresses Akito's face. "I care about you most, after all." And then we hear Shigure's inner thoughts. "I will get what I want. No matter what lies I have to tell or who I have to use, I'll make that dream eternal." We transition to panning up the steps again to Shigure's house, so kind of similar to the scene when Kyo and Tohru were walking back. And we see Kagura, Kyo, Yuki, and Tohru walking up to the house, and Yuki is like, Kagura and Tohru are talking about how touching the Mogeta movie was, and Yuki's like, "I'm glad you enjoyed it," and Kyo is like, "Go home already." Like, he's just fed up with this date. Kagura's like, you're so shy, and then like finger punches him and then giggles lightheartedly. Yuki and Tohru come across a woman who's leaning against Shigure's door, and Tohru asks what's wrong. And the woman says, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm prepared to end my life right here. And then she clicks open an X-Acto knife and raises her arm. I wish you wouldn't do that in front of my house, Shigure says. And then we cut to Kagura kind of like cradling Kyo on the stairs, and we hear the cry, Sensei! We cut inside, and Shigure introduces us to his editor, Michan, who's sobbing and calling him a jerk. And then Shigure is like, que sera, sera, whatever will be, whatever won't. And of course, as he's talking, Tohru is serving Michan some tea, and Michan continues to sob dramatically. Shigure thanks Tohru on Hatori's behalf, and then teases her about where his chocolate is, and she blushes and says she's making it now, and will be happy if he enjoyed it. And Shigure's eyes widen again, just like earlier, as she walks off. And then Michan, the editor, sasses Shigure, move your hands, moving fingers, she says. And then she says, please take your work a little more seriously. You care about your work, don't you? What? Shigure says. No, I always care about myself most of all. Followed by, like, shocked silence. Then please stop getting yourself in trouble by procrastinating, Michan screams. Yeah, Shigure says while she continues to stand over him. I'll follow you wherever you go, Michan screams, and he says, now that's scary, like kind of dismissively. We see the same memory again. So I think this is the third time? Yeah, this is the third time that we're seeing the same scene of Shigure waking up. And he thinks, go ahead, catch me if you can. And we cut to credits. I feel like this time I was efficient with such a detailed episode of summarizing it. There's so many things that happened.
Also, the dub has him introduce Michan with her like full name. Was it Mitsuru?
Mitsuru? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting choice because he just calls her Michan, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They called, it's interesting that they also noticed, so when they called the teacher, Tohru, I think, calls her Shiraki Sensei, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she also gets a name in this episode, which I don't think she did even in the manga for a long time. Yeah, we just read the chapter in the manga where they give her a name.
Yeah, although I think we were talking about how the scene with her at the end with Kana had her name, had her be called by name. Like one of the friends, maybe Kana, like calls her Mayuko.
Like, hey Mayuko, whatever, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But is it revealed this the same person? I mean, I guess you can tell if you look really closely.
I think it's obvious.
Yeah. But yeah, so now we know her full name at least then. It's Mayuko Shiraki. So like she got a full name, and then Mitsuru, yeah. So she got a full name too. That's interesting. So whatever. Yeah, if you watched only the sub, then her full name is Mitsuru.
Yeah.
Cool. I liked it's really morbid, but I love how she like clicks open the knife. She's like reminds me of using those kind of X-Acto knives for school. It's funny. Yeah. So I think that one interesting thing about this episode is that the second half of this episode was never animated before. So I did kind of talk about it at the beginning. Sorry. Yeah. I'm a little sick. But yeah, they the whole second part, so basically the part, I mean maybe even more than the second part because it was kind of altered in the original anime. From the part where Kagura comes over is completely different in the original anime. So
yeah, I think this might mark the biggest change in the adaptation so far.
Yeah, I think so. It's the biggest amount of content that wasn't in the original adaptation.
I
mean, someday we're gonna get to a point where there's only new material, but so far this is the biggest change, I think. So yeah, if you watched the anime before and you're like, what? Where did this come from? It's like it was in the manga.
You didn't know the glory of Mogeta.
Mogeta is in the original anime, but just much later, I think.
And I don't think they like see it. I think there's just like
it's on the TV, I think.
Yeah, it's like on the TV in the background, so you just hear like some dramatic Mogeta dialogue or something. All right.
I thought that was really funny. The little tiny scene of them, the movie. Every time it just makes me chuckle. Another thing that was added, which I thought was interesting, is Kyo waking up from a nightmare. So like I said, the way the manga chapter opens is him saying like, I don't want to think about it right now. There's like a little teaser of that, and then he says it later in the chapter. So instead they added a dream. And then I thought that was kind of interesting because then it kind of almost parallels Shigure waking up from a dream. Like in this episode, both of them wake up from something. So it was kind of interesting. Like I thought it actually added to the story in that way. I'm not really sure. I haven't figured out how to interpret them yet.
Yeah.
But
I liked it just for giving more of a reason for Kyo to be grumpy beforehand. Because like in the manga they're like, oh, why is he so grumpy? Is it something about Valentine's Day? But he doesn't even know it's Valentine's Day until like right before Kagura shows up.
Yeah, in school and in the manga they're at the lockers and then he punches the locker or something.
Yeah, like I mean I think it's implied by the narration that he's thinking about the same thing that he had the nightmare about, but I like it as just kind of a more clear
Yeah, it sets up a reason that he's grumpy instead of Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And not just him showing up and being grumpy for no reason, which is kind of how it is in the manga.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. There's a scene of them coming up the stairs. So Shigure argues with Kyo, and then he leaves, and then Tohru goes and gets him, and they come back. And when they're coming up the stairs, it has this like long pan. I thought some of the visuals in this episode were interesting, and one of them is that they're walking up the stairs in this really, really long pan up the stairs to Shigure's house. And I just thought it kind of added to the feeling of like, it's like they have a long way to go. The thing that Tohru is saying at that point is that I think it's like when she's like, I want to heal the pain in their hearts like the way that they did for me. And I feel like what's implied by that kind of pan or that imagery is that there's a long way to go until they're going to be in that place. It kind of pans up to the house, which is like their home, like we've talked about a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that kind of contributed to that imagery contributed to, like, Tohru wants to help Kyo and Yuki overcome some of their like trauma and their pain and anxiety that they have, but it may take a while. Yeah. Some of the other like interesting scenes were one where Shigure pats Tohru on the head and then his eyes kind of widen. And I joked already, it's like he's having a feeling for the first time, but it's interesting. It's like, and then he says later, like the
feeling is friendship, but he never felt it before.
Yeah.
He's going to keep making Arrested Development jokes on this podcast.
What's this warm feeling? So kind and gentle. And then Shigure, when he's talking to Hatori, it's like, he says that Shigure is motivated to do something. We learned in this episode, I think. Hatori and Yuki commented on it again, and we learned for sure that he's motivated to do something. Not sure exactly what that is. And he said that, you know, he'll do whatever he can to get it, even if he has to use people or whatever, including Tohru. But then he did say that sometimes he feels bad because she's a good kid, but she might be a little bit too pure for him.
Yeah, I've always liked that part in the manga, so I was glad it got translated in this adaptation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it helps give, like, I don't know, depth to Shigure's depth. Like
depth to his depth.
Yeah, because, like, you know, in the first adaptation, he's mostly comic relief. And we talk about how he's got a lot more darkness to him, but I think, like, scenes like that kind of make it, you know, more complicated than just, like, oh, he's secretly evil.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like, it's not just that, he's got a lot going on.
For sure. And listen, like, I mean, I comment on how evil he is constantly, but also I do think, I mean, he has motivations for that, and we're starting to see that now, which is nice.
Yeah.
Even at this early kind of point in the series, right? Not sure what that motivation is driving toward at this point. But yeah, and then of course, like, then he went and like, there's this scene after where he goes to talk to Akito, and Akito is again in like this darkened room, which is really interesting. I'm gonna have to think on that some more too, because this is like the third time, even though it's dusk at this scene, so there's still natural light. The room, the way that Akito is shown in the room, is also darkened again. Like, Akito's always in the shadow every time that they're together, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Shigure comes in and then, like, kind of caresses Akito's face and says that Akito is most precious to him and stuff like that. I also thought it was interesting that, like, when and I didn't go back and check to see if the dialogue was actually the same, like, if it's actually the same phrasing, but at least the way that it's translated is that when Shigure leaves Hatori's house, Hatori is like, well, one of them's going to punch you at some point. And then Shigure is like, I'll reap what I sow. And wasn't there an earlier scene, like one of the first scenes with him and Akito, he says, like, it's time you reap what you sowed or something?
I think it was the New Year's.
The New Year's one. Okay. I can't remember if it was the New Year's one or the one with her friend, when Tori's friends come over.
Yeah,
but
this is when everyone ditched, so Akito was upset.
So I wonder if that also kind of parallels that both Akito and Shigure are, like, kind of scheming something. Like, is it implied that this is directly what they're reaping / sowing? Like, is it related to this? I just thought it was interesting they used the same, that dialogue stuck out to me, because if it is the same and translated the same way, it's certainly translated the same way. So that was cool. It was a nice parallel between those two scenes.
One thing I thought was also interesting, because I think I don't know if it's the same dialogue, just translated differently from the manga, but when Shigure is talking to Yuki, saying, like, after he talked to Kyo, he said that he got impatient and pushed Kyo. Yeah. Like, I think in the manga, he says, like, I got a little annoyed or whatever. Yeah. But I think it's interesting that they deliberately say I got impatient, especially in conjunction with all the talk of him, you know, having schemes and plans.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's translated. I also didn't check that. I don't know if it's translated that way or if it's just like in the subtitle that way and the dialogue's the same or whatever. But yeah, it was an interesting choice too.
Yeah.
Like he's pushing for something.
Yeah.
It seems like he's doing all these things for a reason. It's funny because we saw him like teasing his editor too, Shigure. So he's positioned as this like kind of a comic like agent of chaos. But it seems like there might be other motivations behind all of that too.
Yeah, like we've seen him be kind of a dick before, but him is the first episode that's really shown that he's got some ulterior motives going on.
And also a soft side to his dickishness.
Yeah, like I said, depth to his depths.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess we could talk about Kyo and Kagura's relationship, but I don't feel like it's any different than anything we've seen before.
Yeah, not really.
Kagura wants to get attention from him, and he doesn't care. He's like, no, pass. I don't want to go on this date.
I mean, I think we see a little bit more of her like genuine care for Kyo because she has a bit where she wants him and Yuki to get along better.
Yeah, we do.
That seems like a genuinely, for his well-being kind of thing.
Yeah, she certainly seems to think that him getting along better with Yuki will be better for him overall. So that's interesting. Yeah. And it seems like Haru does too, and like a lot of people in the family think that. So like it's interesting that Kagura kind of pushes him to get along better with Yuki, but then Tohru is like, it's fine. Like she goes out. The scene where she goes and talks to him, I think we talked about this extensively when we read this chapter of the manga, but like when Tohru goes to talk to him, she says, like it's fine if you don't get along, and then he remembers her saying that there's a new emotion on his back and that he has good qualities too, and he's like yeah, and it's really interesting. I thought it's interesting the way that he like comforts himself at that times by thinking about something that she told him, that she said that he has good qualities too. And that he, I guess he doesn't feel like he has to get along with Yuki at this point in time, and that's okay. Like everybody else is trying to push him to change, and he's not ready to. It seems like.
Yeah.
And Toru's okay with that, or that's what she says to comfort him at least. Yeah, I don't have any other non-spoilery things to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
My most important notes were Mogeta and Kyo's 2 random friends.
I love Kyo's random friends. I wish they would have more stuff, but they don't. Not that much.
I don't know. I kind of enjoy them just being random, recognizable background dudes.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. This episode is funny because it really balances a lot of like humor and dark stuff. Especially Kyo being like, is today Valentine's Day? Like, yes, of course it is. I think in the manga he's like, it's just snuck up on me, and they're like, how does the day sneak up on you or whatever? Yeah, it's funny. Anyway, I think that's it for non-spoilers. So next time we'll be talking about episode 10, and we'll talk about some spoilers after the music.
Wait, this was episode 10, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry. Next time we'll be talking about episode 11.
It's like we're just gonna do the same episode over again next week.
Yeah, next week. It's all like Groundhog Day style.
Yep.
It's the same one over and over again. You could probably talk about this one for a long time. There's a lot of stuff that happened, but. But anyway, yeah, we'll play some music, and then we'll talk spoilers. So we'll see you next time if you're not listening to spoiler stuff.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, we're back to talk about spoilers.
The flashback was interesting because it was fast enough that it's pretty vague if you don't know what's going on, but if you do know what's going on, it's actually pretty detailed compared to what we got in the manga.
It is. What was in the manga? I forgot to look at that.
Isn't it just kind of that like negative image of
it's just arm? Yeah, it's Kyoko's arm and the blood. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is detailed. People who read it will know exactly what it is. And I bet people might be able to figure it out too.
Yeah, I think if they slow it down, they can get the gist of what went on.
Obviously
not the details or who it is, but
yeah, I mean they might, because they know that if they're paying attention, they know that Toru's mom was in a car accident. But I mean, like that was pretty obvious before, and none of us got that. So yeah, and I had to really slow it down to figure out what was happening in it. Like I saw the person in the bag, but then his eyes like are kind of fast and stuff too. So
I remember I saw it and I was like, oh, that was a lot just there.
Yeah.
And then I like rewound it again. And I was like, yeah, that really was a lot.
It really is. And the other thing is like, it's really fast, and it is hard to tell if it's meant to be a flashback or meant to be something else. So I thought you could interpret it as like a premonition or something too.
Yeah.
The way that he's thinking about it. Like something bad might happen if I get to know Yuki better.
Yeah.
Versus I got to know someone and something bad happened, which is what the memory actually represents, right?
Yeah. Plus, as someone pointed out that we didn't notice at the time, that Kyoko said kind of the same thing about his relationship with Yuki, which also led to him remembering that.
Yeah, I was trying to find that again before this episode so that I could find the right thing. There's an anonymous ask in our thing that I'm waiting to pause to post because it's spoilery, but yeah, there's an anonymous person pointed out that Kyoko said the same thing about Kyo getting to know Yuki, and therefore that's why it's like tied to that flashback, which is probably true. So it's interesting. But I try to keep it vague, throw all the other new people off. I don't know.
I think our interpretations are still valid. That's just another layer onto it.
Yeah, for sure.
Forgot about.
For sure. Yeah, and then I don't know. There's a lot of different flashbacks are kind of different in all of them. Like, in fact, the flashback or the memory of I don't know if they're flashbacks or memories or whatever you want to call them, but the memory of, we joked about Haru's memory with Yuki being like in the void, like in a white kind of light, and then Shigure's memory of talking to Hatori was in the same kind of light, actually. There's more detail because there's like trees and stuff, but it's also very, very light.
Yeah.
Versus Kyo's kind of
I think
flashback.
it's kind of, I think it's good. Like, kind of Kyo's is like traumatic and chaotic.
Yeah.
Whereas those memories were, neutral and positive, and that they can recall without too many issues.
Yeah. Recall clearly and feel good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to go back. I should go back and watch some of the other ones, because like I think this is treating them in a certain way is kind of, a lot of them are treated in that kind of a similar way at least. So, yeah, it's cool.
Interesting to pay attention to that going forward. Maybe look back at it once the whole series is done, and how the different flashbacks are treated.
Yeah, because there's also that one where it's just like a really like hard cut into Tohru's memory of her mom, where she's like in the kitchen, and then it's like her mom opens the door. Yeah, that one's really interesting too.
Yeah.
So to transition to something else, I just thought that the scene. So like, of course, Tohru walks through the woods in the manga to find Kyo after he runs away. But I thought the way that the scene was like really extended of her walking in the woods was foreshadowing for the true form part. I thought that was interesting. Like, I didn't really think of it, like I didn't really notice it, and then I was when we were reading it, and then when I was watching it, I was like, oh, there's like a lot, like that's really similar to the it could be foreshadowing for that, I think. And the way that she kind of like comes upon him in the woods, and like some of the same, I think he also says, well, I don't know, but it's interesting that like the same thing's going to happen again in a couple of episodes, probably. So, and I also thought it was really interesting the actual angle of that scene, which I didn't talk about very much, but like when she kneels down, and then when it's kind of like Kyo's in the foreground and she's in the background, and you can see his hands. You can see the bracelet very clearly too.
Yeah,
actually.
I noticed that.
Yeah, so like it's also the scene is set up in a way so that it's also like really strong foreshadowing for that as well. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any other serious spoiler discussions? Because I have a gag I want to talk about.
I don't think so. No, I don't.
The other thing was a translation I liked for the dub, but I liked it because it was funny for a spoilery reason. When Shigure volunteers to take Hatori's place in the dub, he says, "I promise I'll be very thorough."
The whole thing is a pun, really, because it's like they're like Sensei Akito is ready to be looked at, and then like Shigure is a sensei because he's a writer, so then he's like, "I'll take your place, Sensei," or whatever. And it's like it's also really funny.
Yeah, like it's funny anyway, but I think they made the innuendo really obvious in the dub. So had a chuckle out of that.
Be sure to be thorough. Yeah. The scenes with Akito are interesting. Again, always in the dark. I wonder what's up with that. I don't have a theory about it yet. But literally every time Shigure goes to see Akito is always in the dark. Even at daylight, even somehow during the day, which is what happened this time. It was like dusk, so Akito was in the shadow of the room. It's definitely deliberate and must be symbolic in some way, but I don't know what yet. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, some of it is probably just maintaining the mystery of Akito for now, but
probably.
I definitely think there's something to the lighting specifically with Shigure being there.
It's true. And then we saw Akito in the car, so like we've kind of seen Akito's face, at least behind glass. So
yeah. I mean, also just like the mystery of Akito in general, not just what he looks like. Just
very true.
Akito's Akito-ness.
mysteriously walking in the garden, messing up all the rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like the major spoilery things that are hinted at this episode is that it's all about Akito and Shigure.
Yeah, that's another thing I was excited to see get animated.
Yeah.
That's spoilers for way down the line that we won't even get to in the manga for a while.
No, and wasn't even in the original anime at all.
Practicing their death. The first anime, they're like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Like, what is this scene about? I mean, it's kind of obvious what it's about, though. Like, even maybe they're just like, we don't know where this is going to. I don't think it's that obvious
because we don't even know about, like, at this point, we don't even know about, like, the whole bond and
that is true.
Akito being God, and that they all, like, woke up crying when Akito was conceived and all that stuff. So
maybe they were like, what the fuck is this? Yeah.
Yeah.
They all woke up crying, and also, like, Shigure says that it's the person that he loves. But that relationship isn't clear at all, I guess. I mean, I think it's just setting things up very clearly that Shigure is scheming something. It's like he finally admitted to it, and then
I think, like, we definitely esteem definitely has something to do with Akito. Yeah. But we don't also know any more than that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Hatori said that you're using Tohru to both of your, like, respective goals. Like, Akito has a goal. Because I think isn't it said that Akito wanted to use Tohru because Akito wanted to prove that how great she was, basically.
Yeah.
By being like, someone will reject you and, like, I'll be here to, like, pick up the pieces or whatever.
Yeah, and I think she got, like, goaded into it by
Shigure.
Ren.
By Ren, yeah.
Might have been Shigure also, but
maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a combination of both of them.
Yeah, but I think Ren doing her whole thing, your whole "you're not special" thing.
Yeah.
To Akito, so.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, we know why Shigure wants to break the curse so that he can have a soul relationship with Akito.
Yeah.
So, someone commented in the Discord that this is like, someone commented like that scene where he pats Tohru on the head is also interesting from Toru's perspective because, this is the first person who's been like a father figure in her life.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like, I never really thought about it that way. Like, she has her grandfather, but he's a grandfather, not a father. And also, like, he seems to be he's nice to her, but I don't think he's, like, close to her like a father, So it's kind of interesting that this is, like, the first time that they have... Well, I mean, Shigure listened to her story very kindly when she was falling asleep the first night she was there and took her in and stuff, but I think this is one of the most direct, like, times that we've seen her do something and him react to it in that way. So that was very charming too.
Yeah, it's kind of a general thing. I think that I hadn't really thought of before, but it is kind of from Toru's perspective. Like, they have those kind of interactions a lot because, like, I just read the manga chapters for the episode we're not going to record today. It has the bit when she's sick and protesting, and he's the one who gets her to stop protesting by saying, like, you're a good girl, so just do what I say.
You mean when she's sick?
Go to bed.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay.
I mean, that's how he convinced her to stay in the house in the first place in the same way, right? Yeah. He was just like, well, you like to do chores or whatever, so why don't you just stay here and do that? I mean, I guess it's kind of between him and Yuki, but I think he's She does often do stuff that what he says, right?
Yeah.
Even when she won't listen to other people, so that's kind of interesting. Because my opinion of Shigure is generally sort of on the negative side. Like, I definitely think that he's using Tohru for something. So then when he does nice things, I'm just skeptical of it. But I think from Toru's perspective, that's not how it is. That's not how it's like, right? So maybe he is kind of a, like, father figure for her. And then there's other... I mean, this is also a spoiler. Maybe I'll just cut this into the spoiler discussion. But there's the whole scene where he goes and he goes to her parent-teacher conference. And, like, on the surface, it could be that it's partial... Like, it's going to tease Mayuko. But also he does go in and, like, does her actual conference.
Yeah.
So
I do think most of the times he's pretty genuine toward Tohru. Like he means what he says when he's talking to Tohru, like being nice to her and everything.
I think so. There's scenes where he's, like, not as nice to her, but
later. I think
later.
I think her presence fits nicely into his schemes, but I think he does like her as a person and enjoys, like, being nice to her.
Yeah, I think so. They have their relationship is relatively good. He acknowledges that he's using her, but aside from that, I feel like their relationship is good.
Mm-hmm. I think even how he's using her is like mostly passive. Like it's just like he's like, oh, this works for me.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that's like how much foresight do you have to do that? I do think Shigure is very empathetic. Like to be like, if I bring someone in, like how does he meet this person and then just decide like within a couple of within knowing her for like a couple of hours to be like,
I think at first he's probably just like, well, this will mix things up and be interesting. It might work for me. And then like as time went on, he had a more concrete idea of how it would work into his plans.
Probably. I think so.
Because he does seem to occasionally just like to be like, oh, this will be interesting. Let's see what happens with this.
Yeah, he does. That's true. Anyway, that's all I have for spoilers. So, okay. In that case, we will see you next time for episode 11. 11. You heard me say it this way the first time. Definitely didn't fuck it up before. Okay, we'll see you later. Oh, thank you all. Oh, sorry. Thank you all for listening. I don't think I said that before. Okay, thank you all for listening, and we'll see you later. Bye.